In Phantasy Star Online 2, you can do almost all the game's content without grouping. You'll often play alongside other people, but there's no obligation to talk to them or coordinate. However, if you do join a party, you get a free 10% XP bonus for each party member. In MapleStory, you can do almost all the game's content without grouping. You might play alongside other people, but you can't fight the same enemies, you can't trade with each other, and you can't fight bosses together without splitting all the rewards. Most of this is only true on heroic servers, where in the vast majority of maps in the game, you just flat out can't be in a party. Even if you wanted to group up, you aren't allowed to. As established players of the modern game, we probably don't even think about these restrictions. We enjoy not having to tell someone to CC when they come into our map. Maybe we group for hard bosses, but for a new or returning player who downloads the game on the basis of it being an MMO, the game telling you that you can't play with your friends for potentially dozens of hours until you naturally reach a boss fight that you can't solo is a pretty dire first impression. Sure, it's been less efficient to party while grinding for years, but since late 2025, you aren't even given the choice anymore. Despite this maybe not mattering to basically any modern MapleStory player, I recently got some friends to try the game with zero MapleStory experience, and it's been on my mind ever since. Games are inherently more fun with more people. But a big part of that fun, especially for stat-based optimization games like MapleStory, is to play efficiently.
This game fucking sucks.
Therefore, conventional game design wisdom would be to guide players toward efficient play by making the most fun way to interact with its systems also the most efficient. This is why even if MapleStory is a largely solo game with next to no PvP elements, it's still important for the game to at least try to be balanced. It's more fun to play with more people. Therefore, we provide a 10% XP boost as an icebreaker to get you to directly interact with strangers who you're already playing alongside. Maybe you'll become lifelong friends. Maybe you won't. While it might be more fun to play with other people, it's also intrinsically more difficult. Playing by yourself is cool and chill, but once you involve even a single other person, you enter into a social contract that restricts you from simply dropping in and out whenever you want. And if you bring an entire guild into the equation, then suddenly dungeons and raids have to be scheduled days or weeks in advance. Broadly speaking, I think there's two categories of MMOs, and a lot of MMO discourse is concerned with which one you prefer. I'm gonna arbitrarily label them classic and modern because I think it's funny, and if I use these two symbols to denote them, I know it will make at least one person smirk slightly as they eat a Factor meal on their couch. Classic MMOs tend to be perceived as more hardcore, but that's really only in terms of expected time investment. In terms of actual challenge, they tend to reward preparation and coordination over dexterity or reactions. Viewers of this channel might know that I take any opportunity I can get or make to talk up Final Fantasy XI, which is about as classic an MMO as classic MMOs can get, while still having graphics. And because of that, it follows the classic MMO paradigm of being almost completely unplayable by yourself. Despite my adoration for classic MMOs, I'd be lying if I told you that a significant portion of my life since trying 11 on a private server a couple years ago hasn't been spent wishing I were playing the game while being cognizant of the fact that if I did, I'd have nothing to do unless I dedicated an hours-long block of time to getting a group together. Personally, I think the jug of greasy goblin juice is worth the squeeze. But it's not surprising that a lot of people are intimidated or put off by this kind of design. Can't believe I fucking wrote that. MapleStory is kind of interesting in this regard, because it released in 2003, making it, alongside Final Fantasy XI, EverQuest, World of Warcraft, and your personal favorite old MMO that I'm forgetting to mention, one of the few games that has aged from the classic all the way to the modern side of the spectrum. Both types of social systems have merit, and I really like games that I would categorize as both classic and modern. Hopefully MapleStory and MapleStory Classic can both be counted among them soon. However, even by modern MMO standards, I think modern MapleStory takes the single-player aspect of the game to an extreme that, in my opinion, does more harm than good. So, in this episode of the exercise in futility that is me attempting to criticize MapleStory, I want to talk about why I think this is the case and what, if anything, can be done to solve it, even though nothing will be done to solve it. Outside of bespoke group-oriented challenges, I think modern MMOs should allow you to play alone, but always make you wish you were playing with someone else. World of Warcraft found this balance during its leveling process back in 2004. In fact, MapleStory itself stumbled upon the solution to this problem back when they added party play maps. It's a single random line with no context in some patch notes from 2016. They don't even explain what it is. It's the same patch they added fishing. Remember fishing? Bring back fishing. Also bring back accented character names. Anyway, back to party play map. In these maps, enemies were stronger but more rewarding, encouraging you to group up with other people to efficiently clear them. Party play maps got removed a long time ago, and when they did, I don't think many people really even noticed. Part of the problem is that modern MapleStory allows every class in the game to effortlessly clear entire maps on cooldown with basically no effort. Because of this, the only way to make party play maps work would be to either make them so large no class could solo them, make the enemies have so much health that no player in that level range could reasonably one-shot them, or, I don't know, have some kind of shield on the monsters that would only break after a certain number of hits. I suppose you could also enforce a minimum party size to enter these maps, and all of this is assuming the modern game has some system in place to stop leeching, which I think it does, but as a heroic player, I don't have a good way to test it. Fun fact though, they forgot to instance non-KMS maps, so if you go to like Commercy or something, you can party up there. Even if you don't have to group for grinding, you do eventually have to group for bosses. But that leads players like me to spend 3,000 hours progressing entirely solo until they reach the bosses that are meant to be grouped for, at which point they hit a massive social brick wall because the game has done nothing to guide players into building the social structures needed to learn and defeat actual endgame bosses. Or hell, even mid-game bosses, or early game bosses, I don't know, whatever you think is a hard boss. I recognize that this is mostly just me being a dumb baby, but at the same time, it's kind of a hard sell when one of the first group activities you might reach in the game is Will's Phase 2 test, which is kind of just a knowledge check that heals the boss if anyone fails, and that's far enough into the fight that it's difficult to reach on your own to practice. Challenger gear and burning events might let you brute force this to some extent, but it's also a questionable choice to tell players that they're better off waiting for an event to skip them through the game before they even know if they like it. In any other game, this would be considered bad progression, but it's something that we just accept as MapleStory players. Regardless, once you're in these boss fights, you have to split the rewards. Therefore, it's always best to solo any fight you can. This might seem antisocial, and it probably is, but here's where I'm going to contradict myself. Soloing bosses is such a huge part of what makes MapleStory's power progression work that I don't think it's a problem worth solving. In games like MapleStory, where you're experiencing a never-ending vertical progression treadmill, the difference between doing 500 million damage and 1 billion damage doesn't really register. Instead, our brains reduce these numbers into experiences. You might not feel a difference from seeing your damage line get longer, but one-shotting a mob that previously took 2 hits is an experience that's easier to process. When you start the game struggling to kill normal Pink Bean, only to end up being able to solo the Chaos version while tabbed out, that's a difference you can feel. You feel like you've gotten stronger. Grouping for bosses and then going back to solo them later feels good. Not only that, but if you can solo a boss, there's a different boss higher up the ladder that you can now group for. It's a good system. It's one of the best systems MapleStory has to offer. Honestly, I might even go so far as to say this is what makes the game worth playing. I do think it's absurd that Nexon just got a pass for not being able to solve the loot rolling system on heroic servers and instead just removed it. It's insane that in 2026 and beyond, we have to figure out how item allocation should be distributed by lining up on one half of the map and pushing a skill to simulate rolling dice. For a game with so much RNG, you'd think they'd be able to figure out the literal random number generator. If I had any kind of authority or pull, I would seriously advocate for them to revisit this, and also bring back the old reboot passive of making enemies have more health but give more XP. Basically, what I'm saying is if you're a Reddit user, dredge up old things from the past and get mad at them again. Actually, I guess you don't need me to tell you to do that. Anyway, back to meeting people. Even if you do want to make friends, the new UI update has made it so the chat box has to be relegated to a tiny corner of your screen in order to have it not block your view. So how am I meant to see if people are talking? They aren't talking, but if they were, how would I know? I used to socialize honestly quite a bit back when people would smega MVP messages. I don't think I've ever had to say smega out loud. You had the whole server crowd into one map, and if you typed something, there was a pretty good chance that one of the 100 people there would reply to your shitpost. But Nexon removed free megaphones from the MVP packages, so now the entire game is silent. I'm gonna assume this is not the case if you're in an active guild, but even then, the chat is so small that most people probably just talk on Discord instead. And speaking of guilds, if you do want to join a guild, purely social guilds struggle to exist because Nexon has linked the guild system to progression so closely that it creates this weird corporate environment that demands contribution from members in order to sustain the perks that are the main reason people are joining these guilds in the first place. Also, speaking of guilds, if you're on Hyperion, first of all, I'm sorry, but second of all, feel free to apply to Arbor Vitae. It's my new guild that I made because my old one fell apart. Also, yeah, I'm on Hyperion and I'm making a video about how the game isn't social. There's your silver bullet for the comments section if you disagree. I could go on, but I suspect that if you agree, you already agreed with the title, and if you disagree, then the same thing. There's kind of this implicit aspect of criticizing MapleStory, especially as a Western player, that kind of looms over any and all discourse surrounding the game. And that's that Nexon probably just doesn't give a shit. I can propose solutions to what I perceive as problems, and even if they reached the highest English-speaking authority on the game in the world, none of it matters if it doesn't align with the Korean player base's expectations for the game, and considering the trajectory of MapleStory and other Korean games like Lost Ark over the last 10 years, it's safe to say this is probably the direction they want for their games. And honestly, it's not that hard to imagine why. I'm unfortunately not Korean, so take this with a bit of a grain of salt, but if you're playing in an internet cafe, the social structure is already made for you. You're probably there with a group of friends, or an arm's length away from a potential group of friends. I've never been in one of these environments myself, but it's not hard to imagine the social benefit that comes from being at what ultimately amounts to a big LAN party. I'm using footage here of the recent Victoria Adventure event from a few months ago because it coincidentally takes place in MapleStory's exclusive internet cafe map. For a lot of GMS players, this is probably the first time they were ever legally allowed in here.
Rewatching this footage and seeing the people in it made me realize that it would be unfair of me to make an entire video complaining about how the game lacks avenues for socialization and not at least mention event minigames, because they're probably one of the biggest sources of social interaction for the average player. Every once in a while, MapleStory's events will feature one or more of these simple social minigames. The gameplay here isn't complicated. Sometimes it's downright dysfunctional, but they give you an excuse to join up with a random assortment of players and play a game together. The game might not always be fun, but you do get to see people cross worlds standing around in a lobby before the game, and you all get to look at each other's characters in an environment that isn't overly concerned with winners or losers. Which is a good thing because, hoo boy, I lost. The motivation to be here is almost entirely extrinsic. We're all here for coins or some other event progress, but it is a dedicated system in the game that exists almost entirely just for the sake of getting you and like 3 strangers in the same room to play together. I think that's really cool. I wish more stuff in the game was like this, but at the end of the day, MapleStory is a Korean game with limited resources to invest in its comparatively less profitable global audience. I wonder if that's the reason that most of the manpower from the Go West initiative seems to currently be allocated toward Classic World. If you're trying to pander to Western tastes, the effort it takes to rework the entirety of the main game's rule set to cater to a subsection of the global player base might just end up amounting to creating an entirely new game. At least this way, it doesn't upend the main game's proven model for the people who are happy with it. At least not in the long term. I understand people are mad about it right now. Also, speaking of Classic, as someone who's made a video on the subject with a comment section full of people asking for more videos that I'm woefully underqualified to make, I think they're doing something similar to the PSO2 party boost system I talked about earlier. Actually, I'm recording this on April 16th, which I think is the day the Classic beta emails are supposed to go out. So let's check my email and see if I got into the beta. The answer is no. I could check other sources to see if this section of my video is correct, but at this point I'm committed to going into it blind, so I'm just gonna leave it in. I don't know. I don't know why I keep doing this to myself. Even if they're not doing that, the game still has party quests and group grinding that completely solve the entire crux of this video that I've been complaining about with regard to the modern game. I guess that's just one more reason to be excited for MapleStory Classic World. Other than Urda Spectrum, Hungry Muto, maybe Commercy PQ, and Monster Park Extreme, there isn't really any content left in modern MapleStory that resembles a classic party quest that also benefits the average person's progression. Most of the old PQs are still in the game, they're just so wildly out of the way that no one does them because they require a group of modern MapleStory players who aren't interested in power-based progression for a few minutes. This isn't a slight at anyone, by the way. I'm one of those people. I haven't done them. Am I making shit up? It's worth stating outright that a lot of my criticisms of the social aspect of MapleStory stem from the fact that I, along with the overwhelming majority of Western players, have opted to play on the heroic rule set, which prevents trading and instances the maps. That's true, and it does make interactive worlds a slightly more compelling offer. However, and no hate to interactive players, but I think it's a little disheartening that the only way we're able to get a game which doesn't allow for rampant uncapped pay-to-win gambling for player power is to restrict ourselves from the majority of player-to-player interactions. It's not my preferred server, but I really do hope they fix things for the interactive players because I watched the Sacrix video and it really does seem like a hellscape over there. Speaking as someone who enjoys and intends to play both versions, I really hope Classic isn't the solution to MapleStory's antisocial design.
Both games have their own merits, but no matter how hard I look, I really don't think You Have to Play Alone the overwhelming majority of the time is one of modern MapleStory's. Grinding out a few levels in Pig Beach before hitting the Genesis PQ will do a lot to placate the part of me that yearns for the social interaction I never got in the real world, but so would a Final Fantasy XI Dunes party or a Final Fantasy XIV house party. I can get that socialization by dropping combos with my friend in 2xKO if I want to. Maybe my brain is just like MapleStory filled, but is this supposed to be like a One Punch Man color?
Yeah, One Punch Man for MapleStory.
But I also want to get it in modern MapleStory. I don't think there's any reason the game can't provide that. Instance the maps if you want. I do like seeing other people when I'm doing my dailies, but why do they have to prevent parties as well? Why did they remove party play maps? Am I trying to make the game into something it just isn't? Did I really just spend the last 10 minutes complaining that Nexon is protecting me from intentionally getting less XP by not letting me split it with another person? Thank you for watching. I'm gonna use this end bit as an opportunity to ramble, which might not be good for YouTube analytics, but who cares? But feel free to click off if you've already had enough of me. It's also gonna be probably less edited, so I don't know. The video's over. Get out of here. These last couple months have been insane. I didn't expect anyone to watch my videos. I thought I'd put out like 8 or 9 and they'd maybe get 70 views each, but instead I posted one and it immediately got something like 1,000 views and dozens of comments. Despite all of my self-deprecation, I must be a bit of an egotist because this really did just start as an outlet for me to talk about stuff. I'm not doing this for the views. I don't think you make MapleStory videos for the views. But at the same time, the fact that people are actually watching and interacting with these things is really validating. At the time of writing/recording, I just passed 500 subscribers, which isn't a lot in the broader scope of YouTube, but in the broader scope of what my brain is able to comprehend, it is incomprehensible. I went from being afraid to speak into a microphone to having 2 separate people make art of my stupid MS Paint cat drawing in just the span of a few months. I can't put it into words, and pretty much all this channel has been so far is me trying to put things into words. To those of you who watched this far, thank you. To everyone who subscribed, thank you. To everyone who made art of my cat, thank you. The blue sky banner is really filling up. This video got delayed because I was moving, but I'm set up now with a new microphone that you may or may not have noticed, which hopefully sounds basically the same as the old one. The new setup is going to let me record easier. I used to have to set a Blue Yeti on top of a shoebox and then crouch down over it in order to record anything that sounded decent. So hopefully this new setup enables me to do videos with live recording in it, or maybe stream in the future if I ever wanted to go down that route. I'm thinking about some kind of progression series. I plan to do one for Classic, but I don't know when that'll be, and I might do one for the modern game if I think that could be interesting. If you have an opinion on that, let me know in the comments. This isn't engagement bait, I just have low self-esteem. Also, this video was more negative than what I like to put out, but since I recently had some friends try the game, it's been on my mind, and I don't know, I thought it was worth talking about. The next video is going to be a lot less inflammatory, but maybe more controversial since the bravest thing you can do on the internet is like modern MapleStory. I hope you'll stick around to watch it, but if you don't, thank you very much for watching this one.